my guest is in the studio, and she's from Noangarup in Goreng country. She's a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, sister, an auntie to many nieces and nephews, and a proud grandmother to a soon-to-be electrical engineer. Her grandchildren are in private and mainstream public schools. They want to learn and they want to enjoy school. Welcome to the studio, Janisha Knapp.
Thank you.
A teacher, an artist and a nurse. Tell us about the nurse bit, because I'm a nurse.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it's been about 35, 40 years now since I've been an old nurse and that.
Yeah.
Yes, did my nursing years ago in Royal Perth.
At Royal Perth?
Yes. And then finished off at Yerrigan, and now I have a position at Notre with the School of Nursing, an Indigenous School of Nursing, and on the board of midwifery and research with the School of Nursing.
And you're an artist. I've seen some of your art. My printer's not printing off colour at the moment. These were beautiful. This is the different seasons, the December to January, the 6 seasons. How do you get time to do art when you do all these other things?
Well, you got to make time. You just got to close the door and look after yourself and come back to who you are, and I suppose the relaxation and surround yourself with cultural knowledge again to find that strength to keep going,
Yeah. And so do you do your art at home or do you go somewhere? Like I know a lot of Indigenous people have places where they go and they all sit down and paint together.
No, sometimes I go. Well, at the moment I've been at St John of God hospitals and that, and one of their mission is to, like with Aboriginal health and introduce what the knowledge and healing is. So I could do a lot of that and with the staff, and we find that it's a good way of sharing and knowing what the knowledge is in our culture for healing. And from our artwork, we've managed to get our scrubs. We're doing scrubs in the hospitals now. So
are you?
And they wear that with pride.
Oh, that would be much better than the blue, just plain old blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing like the uniforms that I used to wear. You probably wore where we had shanks. You didn't have buttons and you had to, laundry would go off and you'd have to take your buttons and your hooks off, and that was a bit much, but that'd be nice. Now, you also, it says here that so you're currently working at Notre Dame University and you're a part of the stolen generation. You went to Roland's mission. I didn't know that Roland's actually had a mission. I'd lived and worked in Australind. Did real estate for a couple of years as well. Yeah. And we were selling properties at Roland's. I didn't know there was a mission. I might have actually even seen. Is it just across the river from somewhere?
No, there's where the township itself is, Roland's township itself.
Oh, probably don't even.
Or if you blink, you'll miss it.
Yeah, that's probably what I did.
Well, it's over the train line and up the hill and to your right. It's 7 hills.
I love that. Give me directions.
and when you see a clump of trees, then you got to turn right.
Oh, okay. And so why would they have taken you away and put you there? What was from Noangarup?
Yeah, well, we were placed under the policy, and 3 times at Noangarup we got hit in that policy under legislation. Yeah, I'm like a lot of my families and that. We've been born into a mission. We were born at the mission, not in the township hospital itself, but at the mission hospital.
So you were born in Noangarup or at Roland's?
At Noangarup, no.
At Noangarup. Yeah. Okay, and there was a mission out there as well?
At Noangarup, oh yes.
Wow, yeah. But then how come they sent you to Roland, or you went to Roland's? What happened there?
I think the numbers got too great, and so they, you had to go to this one. Lot of the kids that went from Noangarup, like some of my cousins, they went to Norseman and to Kundalini Mission. Magnet,
Kundalini.
Yep.
No, I saw something with that. I was doing a lot of research last night.
Yeah.
Or maybe I even saw that with this Gravel Road movie that I was watching. So did you have sisters or brothers, and were they separated, or did you go by yourself there? Or
my sister was left at Noangarup. Well, she was born after me anyway, so but it was just me and my brother that went there to Roland's because we was in the care of our dad. So
you were in care of your dad.
Yeah.
And so they took you away.
Yes.
I know they did that with whitefellas too. I know my one of my brothers-in-law, he wasn't allowed to keep his children when they were little because his wife had left them. My sister ended up, she had to adopt them so that he could keep his children, which they did. Obviously, they were going to do anyway. Yeah, men weren't considered to be able to look after children then. And so can you tell us a little bit about what was that like at Rowlands? Because I was watching lots of YouTube videos last night, and some people really had a good time there, some people didn't. One guy ran away, and by the third time they let him keep running.
Absolutely. We there was a lot of us kids that ran away. And the reason why was I think it was we wanted to find our parents. We wanted to find where were they, and you know, it was a long way from it. Well, it is a long way from Noangarup, but we had some of the boys, you know, that went through the hills and through Donnybrook and down to out towards Albany, Noangarup way, and they found their families. And like you said, about 3 times, so they let the boys go. But us girls, we also ran away because of where we were, you know, and being institutionalised and under that policy.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yes.
It's sort of an arrogance, is it? I don't know, whatever it was. One of the guys who actually ran away is now managing Rowlands, I think.
Yes. And I'm the chairwoman.
You are?
Yes. So, yeah, we even though we retire about 10 times, we still get thrown into the mix, and it's a beautiful mix at times.
Okay, and it's now more of a healing place.
Absolutely. We set it up for a healing place, a place of knowledge. We do have schools coming out there. We have the Giddy Giddy school from Bunbury coming out there. It has been approved by us members for an outpost for a school of nursing from both universities at Notre and Curtin, and we do have elders from both universities coming there also. Okay,
so is there a unit that people can do to go down there? Is that what you're saying, that they're running a class there or classes or?
Yes, well, it's being an outpost and that. And if they want to come from, like, say, the southwest in Bunbury and that, you know, and finish their tertiary levels and schooling and that, we've got that set up out there for them anyway.
Really? And what courses can they do?
Mainly with, like, when they leave high schools and if they want to get into university and, you know, further their education, I suppose it's that's that aim that we've had there. And me being a teacher, so I thought, great, let's get this going.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. When I was at Uluru at Easter, and there was a group of people there. They were students from the Australian National University, and this was a compulsory unit that they had to do. Yes. They also had to go to Darwin, Alice Springs, and go through the jails, the prison system, look at all the justice systems. And I was just wondering whether there's also a unit that people who do go to university in the city could do if they went down there. Could they, you know, something like that set up as well?
Absolutely, and Notre Dame being well, you know, I suppose when you do get into nursing and you do want to go through medical school and that, it's a place of knowing what trauma was and healing, and a place that you can see and understand what intergenerational trauma is. It's a place of knowledge, what went through that gate when children were taken off, and how it affects us today, and the living standards and the trauma that we cannot speak about, the trauma that it concerns Western medical, and how do we fix this, you know?
Should be compulsory.
And, you know, and this is where we get back to what we need as in the voice and that, you know, healing centres, because Australia needs a lot of healing.
Wow. I know when I first moved to Australind, I had a girlfriend who was very psychic, and she could see soldiers across the road from us and what they were doing to the First Nations people there. It was pretty traumatic because I could feel it all, but she could see it all. There's a lot of things that people don't know, and you're so in tune with the land, and that's one thing that used to really concern me about people not even acknowledging the land, how wonderful it is.
Absolutely. Well, our history tells us, and the spirituality of our land and the knowledge of our land, we can walk that path together in healing. And this is more important, healing and coming together, than division in what we are facing.
Two questions there. One about what sort of healings do you do down at Rowlands? Do you do actually hands-on healing? Do you teach Aboriginal healing, or do they get some healings like that? Or
well, we've got we set up academies also. We've got the Hospitality Academy that we've set up, and the kids or whoever go through there, they go into working areas and like in hotels, motels, into cafes, and and even set up their own business. Right. Red dust dealing, we've got an academy for red dust dealing also, but we've got to get that back because of COVID.
Red dust healing?
Red dust healing, yes.
What
so
is that?
We have that academy there also.
What's that?
That's healing like nunkeries on hand.
Yes.
Psychological trauma.
Yeah.
And this is what we have there also.
Oh,
and that's
brilliant.
a good way of medical students when they come down.
They should all go.
Know.
All nurses and all doctors should go there.
Absolutely.
Experience that. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
and it's a good way
goodness.
of starting a conversation, a good way of starting conversation in healing, and balancing that up with what faces us on a daily basis,
Yeah. Well, this was a good segue into what triggered me to invite you to come on the station and talk to us today.
Yeah.
A girlfriend sent me a text, and it had this picture which is inside this week's Herald, the Coburn said, the Herald. It says it's okay to say no to changing the Constitution for the voice. And you've brought with you Anthony Fells. Hi, good morning, Anthony.
Morning.
Welcome to the studio. Glad to have you here too. Yeah, so tell us what it is. What do you mean when it's okay to say no? What does that mean?
In 1967, we had a referendum.
Yep.
And the wider community, after all the policies and legislation that Aboriginal people were placed under, we have a voice. We had that voice, and we still got it. We have a voice. That's over 90% of Australians voted to change the Constitution in 1967, so that we Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, like all other Australians, would be counted as part of the population, and the Commonwealth would be able to make common laws for all. And I always look at what we have in Parliament. As we currently have 11 democratically voted Indigenous members of national. No, it's in
11 in federal out of 100. How many?
There's 150 lower house and 76 senators.
So
5%.
So there should be representing.
So what's gone wrong? What's gone wrong that it hasn't come through?
Well, this is where. For me, I look at and what the struggles that we've had. How about, grassroots people like me, to grandmothers, to mothers and Aboriginal women, how we face on a daily basis a system that we have to be explaining to the authorities, of change. We want those elected members to help us, to be that voice for us. We should be able to come and talk to them, get them to walk that path with us in Constitution, to say, let's have a conversation with our elected members, us grassroots people, to our Aboriginal elected members and to the Prime Minister. We shouldn't be having a voice at this time. We had that years ago. That's why a lot of us Aboriginal people, we come from backgrounds such as the Stolen Generation. We've opened that doorway, and with that referendum in 1967, it's given us an opportunity, like we've become doctors and nurses and teachers, not agreeing with us to say that it's not okay, that it's okay to say no. Have a look at what we want, the grassroots people. Have a look, have a yarn with us, talk to us. Let's have a conversation in what we can do in change, then take it back to the table and see what's the outcome of that.
Well, I've noticed I've been doing quite a lot of research since, I don't know if I told you this, but when I was at Uluru, as I was driving in, I got this message saying, welcome home. And it was like, oh my God, and I burst into tears driving to Uluru. And then the next day, I went there for 2 days I spent there. And then the next day, as I'm leaving, I got this message, you have to advocate for the no vote. And I went, what? Where did this come from? Like, is this the land? And is this the elk? What is this? So then I started to find out more about it and talk to everybody about it. Yeah, and when I speak to some people about it, they just get goosebumps when I say that, because it's like, that's the truth. That's what happened for me. That was my experience. I had no reason to want to follow this. But then I started noticing that there were millions of dollars being set aside by the federal government for the yes vote, nothing for explaining what it actually was, and there's nothing for the no vote. And then the research I was doing yesterday is that 2015 Malcolm Turnbull started the ball rolling. So they've had 8 years to prepare this, 8 years of a very slick, well-oiled machine. And one of the things was very slowly bring it into the community so that every aspect, sports people, that started, the Filipino Association, that started, they'll go through all clubs, everything, and then it'll be as if, well, you know, this is part of the norm, this is normal behaviour. And so the no voice, which is just the other side, and being a Liberal, I like to see two sides of every argument, and we've only been shown one. Anthony, tell us about why this huge one-page article, one-page advertisement was put in the newspaper, the Herald.
Yes, thanks.
Tell us about that.
It's just letting people know that it is okay to say no. And I've asked a lot of people in the last 6 months since this debate really began, 6 to 12 months since the Albanese government came to power, what do they think about the voice? And a lot of people said to me, what's a voice? I didn't know what it was. And then the other issue is when people ask the question, do you think the Aborigines should have a voice? Well, most people will say yes. I would expect them to say yes. But the voice is just a name given to this organisation that's going to be created by the Parliament once it's in the Constitution that they can. But we don't know who's going to be appointed to it, how it's going to be structured, how much they abide by it or whether they do or don't. And you can go right back to when Federation commenced in 1901 and Western Australia joined a couple of years later. But part of the deal of joining the Federation was you had your lower house members of Parliament, and we didn't have any parties in those days. It was... You didn't have.
That would have been.
That was about the time the Labor Party was formed, but there was no Liberal Party until about 1950, late 1949, sometime 1940s. But you didn't have political parties, but they created the Senate, and that was the states' house. That was the voice for the states to even up when you had low population states like Western Australia joining the Federation, which we didn't want to, and eventually only did because of all the eastern staters that were here for the gold rush. Because this was a place to be, like it is again now. And in those days, women didn't get the vote on that, and nor did Aborigines until the 1970s, basically. So all of those decisions to join up weren't made by the people it now affects. And our Parliament has really been hijacked by the major parties. That's why I'm involved with the Western Australia Party, because we're opposed to the major parties, Labor and Liberal. Because they no longer represent the members of Parliament that they're elected to be, because they're bound by the party. In the Labor Party, they're 100% bound by the caucus. And Liberal Party used to say that it was a broad church and, you know, you could cross the floor on an issue that affected your electorate. Well, you won't last in the Liberal Party 2 minutes these days.
Well, people say it's the same bird, different wing.
Yeah, well, it is. And it's no longer representing the people that they were originally set up for small business and families and individual freedom and all those sort of things that they love to talk about. If you don't do the things that the power brokers that control these organisations tell you, then you don't survive very long. And the voice is going to be the same thing. It's going to be controlled by the Parliament. There's nothing that they're saying that they want to do with the voice for Aboriginal people that they can't do now. The Parliament can pass laws. Albanese's got majority in both houses, can pass. And if he doesn't have full majority, he would have support from parties like the Greens for anything to do with improving the welfare life of Aborigines. And they don't need to pass this as a smokescreen.
Some of the research that I've been doing, it talked about this is the first step to a treaty.
possibly.
And then I was looking up, what's the treaty? Well, a treaty could be anything. It's an international thing, and it sort of confused me. But when I was looking at that this morning going, oh my God, there's just so much to
maybe there
treaty.
should, that's the debate we need to be having, not just throwing out Parliament's ability to do create whatever they like with the voice once it's in our constitution.
And they want 12 senators. That's what they want to have. They want this as a position that there will always be 12 senators assigned to Indigenous people, First Nations people.
Oh, that's not proposed in this referendum question at the moment, but
isn't it? It's part of it.
It could well be the agenda of a lot of people. There was talk of that earlier. There was talk of a third House of Parliament, the lower house and the upper house and an Aboriginal House.
Aboriginal House, yes.
We don't know what the agenda, and different people have got different views on all of that. It's something that Labor and Liberal, in all of the time they've been controlling the parliaments and the governments, have failed to really make a lot of significant progress for Aboriginal people, and this is, I think this is like waving the white flag, and in the future they'll just handball it, and whenever there's urgent issues that need to be dealt with by government, they'll just handball it to the voice, whatever it is and whoever they are.
Well, I just don't think that we know enough about it, as you were saying before. What about this talk about there's being an elite, a corporate elite of Indigenous people who actually they'll be the ones, they won't be elected, they'll be selected. What do you know about that? Do you know anything about that, Janisha?
Well, nothing's given to us as a way forward in understanding what this voice is all about. If it was to be explained to us properly, maybe we can have a different outlook on what's involved with the voice,
But would they only explain to you from their point of view? That's what I'd be getting to as well. It's like, how can somebody who's got an agenda of vested interest in one position give you a balanced point of view?
Well, there must be.
And that's what you're doing.
If it's going to be like having this voice, because this is not understandable as far as grassroots people are concerned. We don't want the government telling us all that what's best for us. We have to have our own voice, and they must listen. After all, they look for our votes, I suppose.
Yeah, it's sort of created quite a divisive, and the concern is that I've been seeing is that a lot of people are concerned when it goes through, if it goes through, that it will be more divisive for people.
Absolutely. Asking mass Australians who really know nothing of Australians' true history, and those Australians that have never or even asked for Aboriginal friends, asking them to vote on a crucial matter to Aboriginal people in a tokenistic gesture, because in 1967, we refer back to that, referendum gave us a voice and voting rights. And this voice is an insult to our old peoples, because this is a different campaign.
What about when it was 2016, December, when they had the first meeting about this down in Hobart, in Risdon, Hobart, and then it went to every community, like it went then to Broome, to Cairns, to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and a group of Indigenous First Nations people got together and put forward what they thought should be in each in this voice, and that's where things came up about having 12 people. I think that was the culmination in the end. But then I also heard when they finally, after all of this, they all went to Uluru. A group of people went to Uluru, signed a blank piece of paper, agreeing to what the voice was, but nothing was written in the middle. So why would somebody sign a blank piece of paper? What were they told?
Well, to me, that's a tokenistic gesture. To me, that doesn't involve my voice, because us Noongars down here, one of the biggest nations in Aboriginal,
I've heard it is the biggest
nation land.
It is the biggest nation, isn't it, in Australia?
We don't get included in that. Most of it's from eastern states. Unfortunately, most of us don't.
So you weren't involved in that discussion in 2017 in February?
No.
Because there was one that says the Noongar people. So you weren't, as an educated Indigenous woman, very highly educated actually, and you weren't you weren't a party to any of that, so I wonder who was.
Sometimes they don't want to speak to us old women, see? Sometimes they don't want to know about the struggles and what we want to change for. And sometimes we get, and most often we get waylaid
But to
by
me,
such things.
it's the grandmothers of the future.
That's right.
And I'm reading that everywhere about the grandmothers, and I even had that sort of awareness before. And I said to people during the COVID thing, it's the Indigenous people who are going to actually save us.
Absolutely. If you want change, you talk to a woman. You talk to a woman as lived experiences in black and white in our community.
Yeah.
We can walk, as women, we can walk side by side.
Yeah.
We can tell the voice, what sort of a voice that we want.
Yeah.
But we not listen to it. Sometimes it's okay for other people to say, no, we don't want this. We want to know about somebody else's opinion. But lived experiences, when you're a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother, our knowledge is greater than what you were trying to portray to us in a tokenistic gesture.
And is there still that respect for the grandmothers in the First Nations people? Because I don't see much of it in Caucasian. We put them all in nursing homes.
Yes, there is. We look after, well, I hope to look after my kids. I'm going to milk it for all it's worth because what they did to me. But yes, there is. We don't let our old people go. We nourish them.
Yeah,
We nourish them to the end till we hold them dearly.
Well,
that's the voice we want. We want that compassionate voice and compassionate that we live every day to that elected members to listen to us.
I'm speaking at the moment with Anthony Fells and Janisha, or Juanita, because somewhere I saw it was spelt with a J-U.
Well, that was through policy that my birth certificate changed also.
What, it was J-U or it wasn't?
Yep, both J-U and J-A.
What happened? They did...
Well, when you put into different missions, that's what happens.
So they changed it?
Yeah, we had Spanish nuns also at Notre.
Oh, that would have been the one. Yes. I quite like it that way. I thought, oh, that's quite exotic. That's very exotic. I mean, Janisha's exotic anyway, but it's very exotic to spell it with a UA. So I have lots of questions, but I just don't know which one to ask first. So maybe I'll ask you, Anthony, something about... So you've got a full-page ad here. What instigated this to put a full-page ad in here about this no?
We're a new party, relatively new party in Western Australia, and built for minor parties and independents to take on the big parties with lack of resources and everything else. So we're in the process of trying to build up our membership. We've got about 2,000 members at the moment.
Okay.
Governments don't make it easy for minor parties to be registered. So we're going through that, and then we just wanted to get our brand out there, and that we're interested in this issue. There was no case being promoted at the time. We're not getting funded from the government on this No campaign. There's a group who've got a lot of money for the Yes campaign, and I don't know if it'll be the Liberal Party or who it will be who'll have the No. But
it's government money.
But that'll probably be the death wish of the issue if the Liberal Party are asked to campaign on the No case. We like people to be open-minded and look at the alternatives, because voting against this proposed change to our constitution is not the end of improving things for our Aboriginal and our First Nations people. We that's very important, and this could be a backward step if they enshrine what they call the voice in the constitution. Might not necessarily be the best thing going forward. There's a lot of things have been changed in Parliament and constitution things, and once political parties get involved, I'm very sceptical. And when you've got a lot of lawyers and white lawyers getting in on this issue, they get paid a lot of money. A lot of the money that's thrown into these issues is gobbled up by white lawyers fighting all sorts of issues, and it's an industry.
I did talk last week about Mark Liebler, who was the co-chair of the Uluru Statement, and I think he's also director of, but if you're director or something like that, of the Australian Israeli Jewish Society, and so he's up there. Who really started this? The Voice. That's what I found fascinating too. I did see something in the letters to the editor. Well, I don't usually read the Worst Australian, but I did have a look at this. I'm asking now to find all the information people are putting out about it, and there's a lot of people writing saying that they don't know enough. But then there was a guy called Thomas, someone who's Aboriginal person, works for the MUA, and he said this wasn't, I don't know why he mentioned a statement. He stated this was not an initiative of the government. And I went, oh, I think it was. I think they started it, actually. The government started this. Aboriginal people didn't. That's from what I've...
There's always been very political. There's Aboriginal people that and the lawyers and everything else that are involved with all of their issues over the years, always looking for a better avenue to improve their bargaining position. But, I mean, I'm sceptical now. You've even got the AFL coming out wanting to endorse it, and I don't think they need to be involved in these political decisions. They all got involved in the marriage equality debate. Well,
it's all part of their agenda. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen the roadmap of what they were doing. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3. Then there's this massive stage of information, getting it out to the public, information, and literally is just... Janisha, what do you think about all this? I mean, how much has got out to the smaller communities, the smaller Aboriginal communities, especially, say, the Noongar?
I don't think it's gone out to any of our communities in that, because that's why we're voting no. Because if it was getting out to the community, we would understand it more.
Okay.
We would fully understand what entails it all, what the government want, I suppose, in changing things. Changing our views on who we are and what is needed for our communities. There's one thing that they forgot to ask, that I look at anyway. What about our future? Because we don't want I don't want the community to look at my kids in a different way, because this is getting to be divisive, and I don't want my kids to be looked at in a different way from the wider community, because there is more education, there is more needs that needs to be done that the government could look at, such as housing, education, homelessness.
Yeah,
and this is what we want.
Where to start with that, because it's always on the agenda. So obviously, whatever they've been doing in the past hasn't worked. Maybe they should leave it up to us, the grandmothers.
Absolutely, and there should be more women to have a say on this from within, higher up in the voice, and promoting the voice and what they want, from an Aboriginal's point of view, because it seems to be going in different directions in a divisive way that is pulling us apart from each other. We do have a lot of Aboriginal and Noongar community mob that wants it, mould it, but then when we do that, the subject of a treaty always pops up, and then that changes our mind also. But there's more things such as living standards. I know that we just heard the budget last night, and that there's still families that are suffering, and that's what our main concern is.
I wonder. I mean, years ago when I first started here, and I said I'm looking forward to this, the age of Aquarius. Now I'm getting on to a bit of woo-woo stuff. Coming out of the age of Pisces, which was that hierarchical structure where you had to know where you sat in the pecking order. That's changing to a horizontal structure in the age of Aquarius. But I didn't know this is how it would start to show, starting off with a pandemic to try to get us to conform. Yeah, to what they're, and then this is coming out. It's all. I do also believe in a higher being that will, in the end, that will be what will be guided by. Parting words, Janisha.
My parting words.
I should say Wanisha.
Get us women involved with the voice.
Yep.
After all, our structure is one of families. When we talk about the voice and that, don't divide, come together in understanding who we are as Australians on this land, and that's our budget.
Anthony.
I'd like to say that we need to listen more to the Aboriginal elder women, grandmothers, mothers in the Aboriginal communities that see everything every day, and they're the ones who speak out and intervene and have to deal with a lot of the bad things that have happened in the past, but they're not the ones that are listened to on these issues. It's the white lawyers, the people who somehow manage to get to the academics that get to the top of these organisations and talk all the political righteousness on these issues. But we're slowly improving things, but it's been a hard battle, and this voice is a big radical change in the Constitution, an enshrined issue in the Constitution might not fix all of these problems, and it might be far too easy for governments in the future, when there are these difficult issues, to just handball it to their so-called voice bureaucracy to deal with it. The governments won't deal with it, and it won't be election issues anymore. They'll just say it's a voice that has to deal with that, and that maybe not the best thing.
Well, thank you so much. So I've been speaking with my guests from the studio was Janisha Knapp and Anthony Fells. Thank you so much from the Western Australia